Let's talk about Christian men who notice another man is struggling with something. And in a church context, it's one thing to complain about the church not being a great place to deal with these things. What can guys do to make it a better place and address needs that they recognize? So Kyle, you notice I've got a problem with something. I'm addicted to whatever it is. So it's let's say it's alcohol, and I'm struggling. Guys, what do we do about that? How do we recognize the problem? How do you approach it in a way that makes sense to a guy and doesn't drive him out the door?
Well, I think we have to be willing ourselves to dialogue with that individual at the feelings level. And so this is
no.
You're seeing a guy struggling, and you're telling yourself, "Hey, that guy's really, really struggling." But at some point, I've got to tell myself, all right, you're going to have to sit down with this dude and actually talk about this kind of stuff. And that's a big barrier for us as men.
I think you would definitely want to be in prayer so that the Holy Spirit would lead you to the moment of conversation, because sometimes that, you can maybe feel like the other person's ready to have that conversation and they aren't. Obviously, you want to help them, but knowing when to have that first conversation would be important.
Well, if the help isn't welcome at that moment, you're going to cause more damage than you are going to help.
Absolutely.
Well, and I think it goes back, like if you notice somebody struggling, you need to be working on your relationship with that person, because if you don't have a relationship and trust with that person, you're about to burn something down.
Oh, you absolutely, and that's the number one thing. The churches are full of people who want to help fix everybody, but nobody invited them to do it. And you're going to cause damage by inserting yourself into something you were never invited to. I think building that trust level so that you get invited at that moment.
And this is, I think, this is where we struggle in the church. This is where we have failed. We failed with trust, and it's not just men. It's all the way around. I always think about individuals coming into the church, and they have a greeter out there that's greeting them, and it's always the same thing. How was your day? How was your week? Type thing, and everything's very shallow. Oh, blessed.
Yeah.
But what if you unloaded? What if you absolutely unloaded about
that would
how
make
you're
everybody
real?
squirm, though.
Squirm, because we're not very comfortable with doing that. Neither the one that's hearing or asking, or the one that is telling. Now, early in the 1900s, late in the 1800s, early 1900s. Probably adopted from the Methodists. They were big into the small groups and getting every member into a small group. But those kinds of small groups that many different churches had, and many denominations had, they were more than just what we have now as a small group, go and eat some food or study the Bible together. These were all accountability groups. So you walked in and you sat down, and it was like, hey, Kyle, you talked about that sin that you were dealing with last week. How are you doing with that?
This week.
And everybody's airing out in these small group settings their actual sins. Well, in order to do that, there was a great level of trust that existed so that men and women could do that, and they all participated. And churches grew. We've come a long ways from doing that. We would all struggle with this.
I can't even imagine going in someplace. I mean, I would have to have ultimate trust with you,
absolutely,
to be able to sit there and go, okay, I'm going to open up about this,
right? And
I have to know Alex is good, Stacy's good. She's not going to go tell her her friends, and. I don't trust any of you guys like that.
That's true.
That's true. I think if we did that, that would happen.
Well, with men, you get trust once.
Yep.
And if you break trust with a guy, it's finished. Have you ever noticed?
Hey, I'll be nice to you, but we're done.
Infidelity causes huge chaos in any marriage. But I have watched, and I have noticed that there are more women willing to forgive and get on with life and trust the guy again and learn to trust him than the other way around. If the wife cheats, it's broken. I don't know if I'll ever trust again. And with guys going into an accountability group like you're describing, if trust is broken once, he's never coming back.
He's gone.
Yeah. I would say a healthy church, and we're praying, obviously, that all of our churches are healthy, but a healthy church has members who have deep relationships with each other, and it could be in a small group or not, but I think we need spiritual mentorship in our life. We need close relationships, and if the church doesn't have a lot of those going on between their members, there's some There's some challenges. I think the conversation that we're talking about is not a corporate conversation in a church, right? These are conversations that are happening between individuals. And so I think that for a best spiritual case, we need to be in a relationship where we can mentor and we can work with each other in these capacities.
Yeah. I have, in my old church, we had a men's group that met, and it was multiple churches. It wasn't just our men's group. We had just a few of us decided, hey, let's start something for men. And we ended up making a logo and sending it off to different churches. And we actually had a lot of folks coming on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. We did some things outside of that as well, but there was praying together. There was just kind of coming together to talk a little bit about, what was going on in your life. And I found it very interesting that, well, number one, there was a lot of burdens in there. There was a lot of stuff that nobody had ever talked about to anybody before that was just coming out. And then there was a willingness after meeting a few times. There was a willingness to go ahead and share that within that circle. But it was very, very clear that it didn't leave that circle.
Yes.
And then there was prayer associated to that. So it wasn't just, hey, tell me your feelings, but it was like, okay, now let's all get together and lift up this issue and ask the Lord to heal. That was very well accepted. I think part of our issue is intentionality in the church.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
We aren't intentional enough to set up systems that will provide.
Well, also male-oriented systems, because sometimes what they plan for men looks like women designed it.
That's right.
And no offense, ladies, but that's not what we're looking for. We don't think like you. We don't share our feelings like you. We don't operate on the same plane at all. And if it looks like it's just a mirror image of a women's support group, we're gone.
Mm-hmm. We talked about this in actually a previous bullpen, and that is men build trust by doing activities together. Mm-hmm. If we're doing activities and things and projects, we're building relationships. And yeah, we do need to go to the deeper level of communicating, our feelings or whatever, but that's not going to happen unless we do some things together.
Oh, no. That's right.
It's something that you mentioned a few minutes ago, Palmer, was mentoring. Mm-hmm. Other men, mentoring men. I had a mentor a while back, and I love him deeply. The thing was, I could say anything to this man, and I knew that it would not leave between me and him.
Right.
Just anything. And he would sit there and he would listen. And, then he would offer, his opinion and some, practical things that I could do to, try to help the situation. And I think if more people had that, number one, we'd be closer. We would have more relationships in the church, that sort of thing. But it would just, it helped me on a level that I can't even explain.
I'm guessing, actually, Sean, you reflected on going to camp meetings, going to speaking events, and having people approach you.
Right.
Because it was, safe. They trusted you.
Yeah, and I'm going to leave town.
And you're leaving town. But I think also this is actually a good first step. I mean, likely some of those people had never told another man or spiritual leader in their life about this. And that actually probably popped a bubble that is leading to healing. It was the first step for them to acknowledge and admit that they had a serious issue, and approaching you was probably a very healthy thing for them to do.
You know what's interesting? You talk about keeping things to yourself. I had somebody bring up something years ago and said, "Would you pray for me?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely, I'll pray for you." And it wasn't a big, serious thing. It wouldn't have humiliated this guy. But I said, "Do you mind if I ask my wife to join me praying for you?" Because it wasn't a big deal. We're not talking porn or alcohol or anything like that. It was something relatively minor that wouldn't be embarrassing. And he said, "Well, I always kind of assume that you always just tell her." I said, No, I don't. Unless you tell me to tell her, I tell nobody what you tell me. And that underlines that again, that fear. Where else is this going to go?
I had a pastor once tell me, everything you tell me, I tell my wife. She knows everything.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, then you're not one that I can talk to.
Right. No, you didn't give permission for that.
That's right.
And permission is a huge word for guys. Like, if I don't give you permission to talk to me, if I didn't invite you into my problem and I didn't give you permission to talk about it, don't.
Yeah, because your relationship isn't with that person's spouse, it's with them.
That's right.
You've developed that trust with them one-on-one.
And so I think, Kyle, you were talking about what are these steps. I think the step for us is to build those relationships and build those trust environments where now we can actually get to the core. We always talk about preaching the everlasting gospel, and
right.
you know, people aren't gonna trust you into what the issue is with that particular doctrine or that other doctrine or whatever it is, until you're actually right there, like you spend that time with them, and so with these addictions, I think we got to do the same thing when it comes to men. We sit down with them, and they know that they can trust us. They know that it's not going to go anywhere, and that we really do care about trying to help them solve it. And I think at that point, men are going to open up.